Hey there, Safecrackers, get your combinations ready because it is time for the Comic Vault. Today, on the Comic Vault, I have What If General Ross Had Become the Hulk, and I also have Captain America number 10 from the House of M line. That's right. Let's start with What If. I like What If books. I feel like to some extent you really have to have an appreciation for the way things were to really appreciate What If books. But I'm going to talk about this anyway, as if it doesn't matter. So if you haven't read it, it does actually feel a little bit like an older comic. It's split into those three segments that those older comics are split into, at least classic Marvel ones were, chapters. Which I always thought was kind of weird to split something that's not a heck of a lot of pages into varying chapters. I guess they thought maybe it helped with pacing. I don't quite understand why they thought it helped, but they did. And that's what I find it silly. Anyway, moving on. This is by Peter David and Pat Olliffe. So if you're a big fan of Peter David Hulk, here's another one. Here's a What If by Peter David. And Pat Olliffe I know from some of those Spider-Girl comics that I'm kind of strange for collecting. I'm not sure why I like it, but I do. Tom DeFalco does some cool stuff. But so instead of Bruce Banner, it's not really hard to figure out what this issue is about, but instead of Bruce Banner saving Rick Jones, General Ross runs out into the field and tries to save Rick Jones. So Bruce Banner runs out into the field, and he grabs the boy and he throws it in. That's the way it used to happen. And he grabs the boy and he throws him in the trench. But in this one, he scares the boy into the trench because it's General Ross. He can't be gentle. He goes out there, he points a gun at the kid and says, "Get off the field. What are you doing out here?" And he's like, "I don't know. I'm just a kid." And so eventually they try to run and they toss him into the pit, and then the hilarity ensues. But it's the way this one's different from the original story is Thunderbolt Ross, which, by the way, it's funny that this exists and so does the Red Hulk, considering that they're the same guy. In fact, I kind of wonder. About 2008 was when Red Hulk was introduced, and this came out in 2005. So just a measly 3 years before then, they did this, and I find it funny. You know, sometimes I think creators will do something and like, wouldn't that be silly? Wouldn't that be funny to see that happen? And then they do it, and later they go, you know what? That actually wasn't a bad idea. In fact, that happened with some Hack Slash stuff, I believe. The comic book series Hack Slash, not a descriptive term of Hack Slash, but they have an issue called trailers. They have a bunch of trailers that were supposed to be funny because they would never be done, and then later they do things like them. Go figure. At least I thought that's the way it was supposed to be. So, the art's pretty in this. It's very classic styling, and Thunderbolt Ross is sort of a flat character. You know, he's always been a, well, not always, but up until recently he's been less flat. But he's always been a guy that's just out to get the Hulk, and he's always been a guy who's just very gruff and angry about nothing. And I find him to be grating. Even in this one, I find him to be a little grating. I don't really care for General Ross's characterization. And even when he becomes the Hulk, the entire point, his moment of change in this book is when he realizes how difficult he's made things. And I can approve of that. That's fair. He does have his moment of change, but you have to wait for the end of the book before he has a moment of change that makes him more bearable. But when he turns into the Hulk, in fact, in the original book, in the original Hulk series, Bruce Banner turned into the Hulk at night. So night hit, like a werewolf, he turned into the Hulk. And in this one, he turns into the Hulk immediately. General Ross turns into a Hulk, a Hulk, because there's a lot of them now. But he turns into the Hulk and generally causes havoc. I won't tell you about some of the more surprising things in here, but one of the more irritating things about this book is that General Ross is said several times throughout the entire book to have kept all of his faculties about him. He's a guy who knows exactly what he's doing, he just doesn't have the ability to vocalize his feelings or his intents or anything he wants. He is stuck in his head. He's just this big, massive gray monster body that's jumping around, and he can't vocalize things. But he's perfectly clear-minded. So why is he tearing up everything? Why is he calling attention to himself? He goes into people's houses that he knows, and he rips the houses apart because he's huge. He should know that he can't fit into the house. How is it that he has all of his faculties about him if he's going to his daughter's house and tearing it to pieces? He jumps in, ruins part of the building just to get in, and then jumps out and ruins the rest of it. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that he has all of his faculties about him, but he's a big lumbering monster now who makes choices that a monster would make. It would make sense to me if he didn't have any of his faculties, went to see these people because he knew them, and then destroyed stuff. That makes sense. But in this book, he doesn't have all of his faculties. He just destroys things for the sake of destroying things, and because apparently he doesn't know any better. And it really bothers me a bit. Really bothers me a bit. But I would say that it's an okay constructed story. I don't necessarily mind some of those issues overall. It's just, if you ignore the narration, the book actually makes more sense. And yeah, that's the end of it. I don't necessarily recommend this one. It is at best okay, and I feel a little iffy about it because I really wanted to like it. People tell me People tell me Peter David's pretty good on Hulk. So when I found a What If by him, I thought, hey, a one-shot story, I could pick that up. That wouldn't be a problem. But I won't tell you about the more surprising ending. I found a lot of the book to be questionable. I don't think it necessarily is cohesive. Now, moving on. Captain America number 10. I really enjoyed this book. Maybe I'm just a little bit of a sucker for Captain America, but I've never felt that way. Like Captain America Corps, Cap really liked it, and I thought it was kind of mediocre. But this, if you like alternate history in your comic books, maybe it's because of X-Men First Class that I'm just super open to accepting an alternate history of things. This is what that is. If you ever wondered what it would be like if Captain America had survived World War II and managed to live out his days in a regular lifespan, this is what that's about. And of course, House of M, part of the important thing about House of M is that many major players within the Marvel U were given exactly what they want by, well, some character. If you haven't read it, if you tend to read it, I'm not going to say it. I haven't actually read it myself. I've only read specific parts, but that's the premise. So, through magic, Captain America gets exactly what he wants, and that's why there is an old guy on the front of it that's old Steve Rogers. And if you really look at the picture on the front of the cover, you can kind of figure out all of the little surprising fun things that are actually in the book. But I'm going to spoil some of that for you. So, be careful. I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens, but Captain America lives through World War II. He cleans up. Here's a guy. What's really interesting about Captain America in this one, it doesn't even necessarily need a story. In fact, if I was going to say what the whole story was, it would be just hitting highlights of this guy's life that make him seem like a little bit sadder of a figure. You know, he's so epic in World War II, and then he disappears at his height. And then he comes back, and now he's still in his height. We never see Captain America as sort of a pitiable guy, other than the fact that he's a man out of time. But, you know, how many times has that happened? We don't necessarily care that much anymore. But what's neat about this thing is that here's a guy who is just sad about the way things turned out. In fact, they even have a particular passage in here that's really pretty sad. That's saying something like, you know, just because you, oh, I wish I would have written this down. It hadn't occurred to me that I would have wanted to say this. But, yeah, anyway. The, Captain America lives through World War II. Captain America gets to live into the McCarthy era, where apparently McCarthy is not so much all up in arms about communists as he is more about mutants. And Captain America is a big advocate of freedom because he's Captain America, and he thinks that you ought to be free if you're a mutant, so he's a big advocate of mutant rights. And at some point, he even becomes a mouthpiece against Magneto, who in the House of M series comes to power, and yay. So there's, you know what? Just go out and check it out, guys. If you like Captain America enough that you want to know how Captain America's life would have turned out, I think that's exactly what would have happened. He would have run into trouble with the McCarthy era people. He would have been accused of things. He would have stood up for himself. He would have stood up for the little man. Captain America would have become a freedom fighter that worked within the system, and that's exactly what he's doing here. He never becomes an outlaw. He just becomes a man who cares so much about doing the right thing that when it ultimately comes down to the end and things have worked out in sort of a sad way for the state of humanity and for the state of the world, he's sort of a broken guy, but he's not a broken guy. That's the thing, is that he still has his pride and he still tries to do what's right, but the entire world around him just makes him sad, and that's where the book ends. So there's not a lot of story in this thing, but I have to say I enjoyed it so much that I didn't care that there wasn't much story. And I'm going to leave it at that. So, thanks for watching the Comic Vault, guys. Again, the Comic Vault is vast and ominous, and you can buy from and donate to the Comic Vault. To buy from, just go to wearegeeks.nerds.com and click on the Comic Vault. It can also be donated to through our P.O. Box, which is Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you later.